look into a business, or when I take a role, is how do you make the people successful? What are the support and training, development? Because at the end of the day, we're selling capability. So I do think focusing on the people, focusing on the processes, and engaging the team to actually be part of the solution, so you get buy-in, as opposed to saying, this is the process, you need to follow this. You've got great people. How do we make sure that during this process, that capability isn't lost?
Yeah.
Because that's the asset they're buying, the skills, capability, and the team.
What are the challenges for businesses to build a Microsoft practice from scratch, and why is there such an appetite for acquisitions?
Welcome to another episode of Microsoft Mentors, the podcast. Microsoft Mentors is designed to lift the lid on the journeys of the most successful leaders in the Microsoft partner ecosystem. Every week, through candid conversations with founders, business owners, and technology thought leaders, we explore their strategies, grit, and lessons behind their growth, and how they're building competitive advantage for the future. These are the untold stories and practical lessons from leaders who are defining success in Azure, AI, data, app innovation, and security. Our mission is simple: to tell partner stories at scale and create impactful Microsoft conversations.
Hello, and welcome to a very special in-person edition of Microsoft Mentors, the podcast. We are at the centre, the heart of the operation at Intercity, and I'm joined today by David Keeling.
Yeah, nice to meet you. It's really great to host you today at Intercity, and welcome to everybody else.
So, David, I think, as people have listened to the podcast before, they'll know a little bit of what the conversation is going to look like. It'll be really getting a bit of a feel for your background in technology, in business, and where that's led us to today, really. And I always think, and I like understanding, and it might show your age a little bit, David, is getting a feel for, even before entering the working world, what did life look like for you in terms of technology? Was that something that has always been an interest for you? Is it something that came later in life? What did that look like? And tell us a bit about the technology landscape for the younger listeners when you were younger.
Okay. If you go all the way back, for those that probably remember that are of my age, my first computer was a Commodore 64.
Yeah.
I remember being at home, going from gaming to actually writing code, and that was sort of an early interest. But then I left school, and bizarrely enough, I became an electrical mechanical engineer, and then quickly realised that wasn't for me. And then obviously the interest in technology then really took hold.
Yeah. It's funny that Commodore is a very common thread. Yeah. Commodores and Sinclairs, I think, are the two that always.
And don't forget BBC. That they were the other big popular laptop computer at schools at the time. And then just a quick snapshot of my background, I guess. For some of our older listeners, you remember the pioneering technology that was text messaging.
Yeah.
I was really fortunate. I sort of fell into a role at one of the companies that pretty much pioneered messaging, and what a journey. I was there for 13 years and went from sort of a small operational role, and then 13 years later, we were doing 2/3 of the world's text messaging. I had ran the UK, ran some of the regions. So I spent a bit of time in Southeast Asia, lived in India, lived in South Africa, and ended up running the entire managed IT business, which was over 250 million and thousands of people all over the world. And, if I look back, that was an incredible journey because, dare I say it, we were acquired twice.
Yeah.
We acquired other businesses. We actually acquired our main competitor. And then the people that set the original business up, we were then divested back to them. So an incredible journey. And that was really my introduction to technology.
Almost poetic as well. So in the Intercity HQ here, David's just taken me through the timeline of Intercity as a business. And obviously Intercity started out in mobile technology.
Yeah.
Was it in-car mobile phone?
In-car, if you go back, Intercity were one of the first partners and the largest partner with Vodafone. And really, that was the starting point of the business with Alan Jackson, who set the company up. And then over that period, they've slowly transitioned, still building on their heritage as a mobile provider, but then branching out into managed IT, managed networks, managed connectivity. And then obviously we'll talk a little bit more about the acquisition of Centrality.
Yeah, it's just interesting. There's these two parallels, and your lives have converged. You started technology in SMS mobile. Intercity started in mobile, and then you've all sort of converged to where you are today. And so I guess in terms of, if we look at sort of your earlier career, were you a hands-on technologist for periods of that? Did you move quite quickly into, leadership type roles? What did that sort of makeup look like of early roles in your career?
Very early on, I worked obviously for a management team, and I was really fortunate. I got mentored by a phenomenal senior leader, and he really pulled me through. So it was a great opportunity to get involved in wider opportunities in terms of building my skill set and going from a very traditional operational role as a project manager, operations manager, and then moving across to running sales, sort of really understanding finances. I also did a postgrad MBA to build on my skills. And another real passion of mine, I was an apprentice, and early on in my career, sort of the whole people aspect is really dear to my heart. And I spent a few years as a national apprenticeship ambassador, and actually was brought on board to help define the new apprenticeships that everybody does today as part of the Trailblazer, which if I look back at my career and how I was mentored and the opportunities, it's really great to see how other people, certainly the younger generation, can be pulled through with new learning opportunities.
Yeah, and I think that's going to become probably even more of an issue as we move into, and what is it, 5 minutes in, I'm already going to mention the AI word.
Yeah.
But as AI becomes, more of an influence in the industry, and I think where we can all see AI plugging in is to probably tasks and roles and responsibilities that have historically sat in more junior engineering type roles. It's going to become even more difficult for people to enter the workforce. What does that entry level become in terms of technology experience and need? And I think, hands-on experience in things like apprenticeships is going to become vital to keep the flow of talent into the industry, isn't it? Yeah, and
I think a challenge is the skills that we're teaching the students and graduates, as quick as we're teaching those people, the technology is moving on. And really, it's about how do people get hands-on with the technology and embrace it? Because I think it's fair to say the roles that people are trained for today aren't probably the roles that we're going to see in organisations going forward. And I think that's actually a real challenge for some of the younger generation to get their foot on that ladder in terms of the opportunities that are available.
And how do you deal with that as well as a leader within a business? How do you forward plan and succession plan for roles in the future that you don't even know what they are yet?
Here at Intercity, it's I'm really proud to be on the board, but there is an absolute focus on the younger generation. So we do a lot of work going out into the schools and sharing a little bit about what we do in the business, sharing what is work.
Yeah.
But then actually bringing those people into the business to give them first-hand experience, and then obviously mentoring some of those people. So we have a mentoring program where we go out and bring young talent into the business. And actually one of the things we get them to do, which can be a little bit daunting, is get them to do a project and then present that back to the board of the company to say what they've learned. And I think it's that kind of experience that we need to help the younger generation in terms of what work looks like, what a career could look like. Because I've got a 17-year-old son. And I ask my son all the time, what do you want to do? And his immediate answer is, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know what I want to do. However, at the same time, he's the first person, if you talk to him, he's all over AI, he's all over social media, and certainly has a more progressive view about technology than perhaps if we sort of wind the clock back to sort of when I started my career.
Yeah, and I think the landscape that younger generation are going to bring into the workforce is going to be, like you say, markedly different to people that are already in the workforce. Even if I think about my journey, I'm a little bit younger than you, David. So I'm at that crossover of sort of dial-up internet to broadband. That's sort of my inflection point. And I think probably say I'm probably feel lucky that when I was at school, smartphones weren't quite there yet. Social media was starting, but not quite there. But then if you look at someone that is 15, 16 now, and they are going to have been on social media the whole time, they're going to be very AI literate coming into the workforce. And I guess all of those are going to be advantages. It's just making sure that they can be used and there's still opportunity for them within the technology landscape. So your role at Decision, obviously that was in that SMS type world and a global role. I guess you probably then got quite a unique lens on maybe how different countries, different cultures, how they work within organisations. Were there sort of, I guess, trends that you saw that were similar across regions, and then big trends that maybe stood out as being really different?
I think we spoke earlier. I spent a long time probably not doing the best to improve the carbon footprint of the world. Spent a lot of time jetting around. Real highlight for me was I spent a lot of time in India and the culture in India, how, real family feel, not only in the workplace, but actually the bond that you created with staff. And, years on, I've still got friendships from my time in India, which is complete contrast to perhaps work that I've done in Riyadh, where it's a completely different culture. And similarly, down in South America, where there's, absolute opposite ends of the spectrum in terms of work experience, engagement with customers, and the demands that they have. Certainly, I remember many a difficult conversation with meeting the expectations with some of the customers in some of those geographies, where the expectation as to what they believed that they had purchased versus actually what they'd purchased, and what was normal and expected in the culture was quite demanding, especially when you're not from that culture, quickly having to adapt, quickly coming to really understand what it's like to work in those environments. But then obviously that makes you a much more rounded individual when you come back, and you can reflect on those experiences and how, at the end of the day, how important it is to look after your people and build, long-term relationships that are trusted and partnerships with customers. I think, moving away from a transactional engagement with a customer to a real partnership, having worked around the world, really understanding how you can build that in those different cultures, I think is something I look back on. And having travelled the world, I always find you reflect on those meetings, those discussions of what you take away and how you can use that going forward. And then equally how you can help other people with that experience that you gain, that life experience. Because it's not something you can just read in a book. It's how do you bring it to life?
No. And business at the end of the day on all levels, customers, staff, teams, it's all built on people. And I think, especially as businesses scale and get bigger, sometimes that can get diluted down by targets and numbers and ambition. And, when you get into the even bigger scale, share price, stock market performance. But at the end of the day, it's always people that are underpinning that, isn't it? And it's such an important element. And I think, having known you in the industry and the businesses that you've worked within, it always feels like that is a real cornerstone of every business that you've worked within.
Yeah, and I think we're in the world of providing service to customers, and ultimately that is delivered by your team, your people, and it's that old saying: if you look after the people, they'll look after your customers, and they'll look after your P&L, and that, dare I say it, is one of been my founding principles whenever I look into a business or when I take a role, is how do you make the people successful? What are the support and training, development? Because at the end of the day, we're selling capability, and making sure that you look after your team is absolute paramount importance. So I think having a great team, building a great team, enables you from certainly in a managed IT perspective and consulting perspective, really means that you can have that trust and they can have trust in you. And ultimately that builds your brand, that builds your values and the culture in the organisation, because culture comes from within. It's not something you can put on placemats and the old days mouse mats and say, these are our values, these are our culture. You need the team to really buy into that and be integral in forming that.
Yeah. And then when does Microsoft start becoming a cornerstone partner for you in your career? When did that really sort of take flight?
So I guess I did a few years working for a SaaS provider. They were actually based in AWS. I spent about 5 years as COO building out the organisation and sort of working with some of the Goliaths, Amazon, Apple, Google. I remember my first week being sent on a plane to San Francisco and New York, meeting all of those Goliaths, and then coming back and then starting that journey on actually a SaaS platform that's across 2 different clouds, and then leaving that role and then being basically headhunted to join Centrality in June 2018, which was really the start of the real journey with Microsoft.
And so it's 2018 that?
Yeah.
So when you joined Centrality, then just give us a bit of a feel for what did the business that you landed into look like? What was their service mix? What was their sort of style and approach in the market when you joined?
Centrality was formed by a gentleman called Mike Davis, real entrepreneur, and he had real deep grounding and knowledge in Microsoft. So, the business was had a long history from 1996 working with Microsoft. In 2008, they became a Microsoft partner, but it was a relatively small business, 40 people in the organisation, very much punching above their weight. Competing with some of the GSIs and being really successful, delivered a great service. But actually, whilst Microsoft was part of their overall solution, they also did networking, they also did managed IT, so a much broader portfolio. And my role of joining the organisation and taking over from Mike was Mike had got it to a certain state. And he'd said, right, I want to bring in the CEO that can really accelerate the growth, with a simple view that at some point that he'd want to realise his investment and obviously take the business to the next stage. And that was really my mandate. I remember meeting Mike in a coffee bar and him explaining this is my vision for the business, and me going away and saying, right, if that's what we want, how do we do that? And then, I was successful to get the role, and then the journey really started.
Yeah. So you really came in with the mandate, and, between you and Mike, the vision was always let's grow sustainably, but to a point of an exit event or a realization event, which is maybe a little bit different to journey that some CEOs go on. I think if you're maybe a founder CEO that starts out, I think a lot of the time you probably feel your way through the market, through that growth. That's probably what Mike did. Gets to a certain point, you then coming in externally to take the business on the next phase of growth. What does that plan look like for you?
are you quite clear in terms of milestones, timelines? Yeah. Just walk me through a bit of what that looks like.
So when I arrived, I spent a period of time just getting to know people, understanding what we did, who our customers were, meeting all of our customers, and then sort of stepping back and saying, right, what's the plan for the future? What's the long-term plan that we're going to build out? And then how do we scale? And to scale a business, you need three things: structure, process, capability. So early on, we built a plan around how would we achieve that. And then I did a bit of a process of engaging the team and saying, what do we want to be famous for? So we got an external facilitator in, got the team together, and they came up with some values called HEART, which was all about how we wanted to be perceived by customers. How did we be, what are the behaviors that we had as an organization, centered on honesty, having expertise, being easy to deal with, delivering results, and working as a team and collaboratively with customers. So a little bit corny, called HEART, but that was at the center of everything that we did. And then I ran a bit of a program called Back to Basics, where we looked at all of the processes in the business. Did we have the right processes? I brought in a leadership team to really bolster the capability in the organisation. And then as part of that, then really double down on what do we want to be famous for? So if we really want to be a Microsoft partner, what does that mean? And then put a plan around that, as in what are the skills that we need. We looked at building out capability towers. I'm really proud of the people, how we brought them on the journey to get to a phenomenal business with an unlimited training budget. So that was, when we're looking at our team, if there's anything you want to do around Microsoft, unlimited training. How do we take you on that journey? And that was really the starting point for how do we scale the business. And over that time we grew 148%. I remember a conversation as a team with the board saying we really want to be. We could see the opportunity for cyber, and we said, right, we want to really double down on cyber. And then we said, well, what does good look like? If you're a cyber partner and you're in Microsoft, what's the pinnacle of where you want to be? We put a plan together, and then we built out a cyber strategy. And, over a couple of years, we did some work around CSI, and then ultimately we became a MISA partner, which was, a big tick in the box because that was the strategy, that was the goal that we wanted. Yeah. And if I look at the business now, actually that's a real cornerstone of what we provide. That's deep expertise along with some of the other capability pillars that we've built out. Yeah. So I guess that's a bit of the journey about the sort of the road to Microsoft.
No, definitely. And we'll come back to the security bit in a minute and the cyber bit, because we were talking about it before, and I think there's definitely some interesting points around that. But when you look at those cornerstones of growing the business, one of those things that you mentioned there is process. And I think, and it'd be good to see if you've got examples of this, but what I tend to find in these conversations is that when it comes to scaling and trying to scale at pace, processes are normally the quickest thing to fall over if you've not got good processes. So did you have any realizations during that scaling period where you're like, we thought we were doing okay here on this process, but actually we need to be way over here to actually meet the demands?
What was interesting, a lot of the answers come from within. So instead of sort of coming from the outside saying what's broken, actually engaging the team to say, is there a better way we can work? And actually, in many cases, the team said, we know what good looks like. These are the things we need to do. But we went through pretty much every process. So, how do we sell? How do we engage customers? What's our delivery mechanism? And also, what are our propositions? So, how do you build that repeatability in what you do with customers? And that means, in some cases, certainly when we built some of our managed IT and cyber propositions, is what is a really good customer-facing proposition that meets a business need and an outcome that you can deliver repeatably and at a scale that means that you absolutely excel, but you've got a level of autonomy and automation that delivers the return. So I think from a process perspective, did we find things, as in all of these things, if you sort of unpick the stones, you find a few skeletons in the cupboard.
Yeah.
But we found some of those. But actually, it was the team that said, these are the processes that aren't quite where we need to be. And also, we put some basic governance structure, and I think that really helped, both in terms of how we want to work, and also how do we empower people. Because I think that's the other thing. It's all very well putting rules and policies, but actually, how do you empower the people in the business who actually day to day are the people that are going to make the difference? I do. One thing I would say is I went back to the shop floor.
Yeah.
So I spent time sat in the service desk, and one of the things I'm always proud of, when the first thing I do when I walk into the office is I go and sit with the engineers. How's your day been? How's it going? Why? Because they're the people that are speaking to the customers every day, and they're the people that have that relationship. So I do think, focusing on the people, focusing on the processes, and engaging the team to actually be part of the solution, so you get buy-in, as opposed to saying, this is the process, you need to follow this, and not giving them a voice. But yeah, we had, dare I say it, there's always skeletons in the cupboard.
Always. And it's interesting that I think I may have mentioned this on the podcast before, but I do like the story, and it's outside of technology, but an app actually that we're in Birmingham, Ben Francis, who runs Gymshark, the gym brand, and he started it, like a lot of these stories, in his garage, in his mum's house, printing T-shirts. It's now scaled to a £1 billion business. But when that business took off, he stepped out of the CEO role and put a CEO in place. He said, I'm not ready to run the role as a CEO of what this business is becoming. But then he went away and worked in the marketing team, worked in the distribution team, worked in the design team, to learn all aspects of the business. And like you say, what do the customers actually want? What are their interests? Obviously, that's in the gym apparel space. So what are people buying? Yeah. Why are they buying that? And I think there's definitely a lesson there in you going to sit down with the service desk team, or that example with Ben Francis going to work in different parts of an organisation, is that there's so many cross-functional bits that work together to deliver an outcome to a customer.
Yeah.
That as a leadership team, you do need to get into the roots and the weeds of that to really understand it, don't you?
Yeah, and I also think sometimes it's really, having run really large organisations, there is always that, as soon as you get over 100, 120 people, you get these clusters of people that sort of become silos. Yeah. And, with obviously Centrality, when I joined, was quite a small organisation. And that presented some real benefits, because it was really easy to get different functions together to say, right, we know we've got to work together and on delivering an outcome to a customer, whether that is service transition or project management or sales. How do we make that as effective as possible and repeatable, and bringing the teams together so that they were building the process together and getting the handshakes. I think, we were really fortunate, because we're at a scale that it was really easy to do that, and having worked in large organisations, that can be quite tricky. I think the team really took the initiative, especially if you create the right culture and the right environment where people, that whole level of empowerment.
Yeah. And you mentioned that Mike had built Centrality as, a managed IT service business that had a good Microsoft leaning, but also played in other camps. And you went through a process of what do you want to be famous for, and that becoming the Microsoft piece. Were there sort of sacrifices along the way that had to be made in terms of, legacy customers that you had to move away from to become famous and really sort of double down on that? Were there, hard decisions like that?
Yeah, I think historically, because we had such a broad portfolio, it would literally be, what do you want? Yeah, we can go away and do that.
Yeah.
And sort of having the discipline to say, these are the things that we do. We actually don't do that anymore. We've got a great partner that we can work with. That was a bit of a transition. and also explaining to customers that that's the journey that we're on.
Yeah.
And I think at the time that was quite difficult for people to appreciate. Why is it that we're only doubling? We were really clear: Microsoft first, cloud first. That's what we're going to be famous for.
Especially the sales team, right? When they're like, I've got a checkpoint opportunity here that's worth my target. Yeah. Why can't I sell it?
and simple things like, can you go and put a Wi-Fi in? And we were like, we could do that, but that's not our core capability. Other people do that much better than us.
Yeah.
And actually, we should partner there. But if you want something around the Microsoft tech stack, absolutely. We've got a wealth of capability and knowledge in the business. And I think that, getting that discipline to say, these are the things we're going to do, and double down and say, we're going to be experts. And even within Microsoft, we made some early decisions that said, right, we're not going to be a Dynamics partner.
Yeah.
That is so different to modern work and Azure. We were really clear on that. So again, we had the discipline to turn around and say, yes, we can probably help you on Dynamics, but actually, we'd suggest you go and have a chat with these guys because these guys are really good.
Yeah.
So again, just having that discipline to say, we're going to focus on these things and we're going to be famous for them.
Yeah. So that was obviously 2018, sort of the journey of the years in between that. Was there a sort of a key inflection point where you go, right, we're nearly ready, we need to sort of start going out into the market and having conversations and seeing if there is appetite for investment or acquisition? Was there a clear point there?
Clear point. Probably not immediately. We I guess about 2 years before the acquisition from Intercity, we'd sort of got together as a board and said, right, we were growing steadily and continue to grow. The business is in a great shape. Because we'd put some of those basics in, we had all the governance, so reporting, governance, we'd got some solid trading behind us, and we were able to then turn around and say, right, actually, if we want to be in a position to be acquired or invested in, what do we need? What's the blueprint? And then started that process behind the scenes, even though we hadn't gone to market.
Yeah.
And at the same time, dare I say it, as a Microsoft provider, there aren't many quality providers available now that haven't been acquired. I'm going to say it. There wasn't a week when I didn't get an approach from a PE or an organisation. Are you up for sale? It would be great to. And we were quite resistant to that.
Yeah, you could have dined out in London every week.
I did dine out a bit, but not every week. But there was obviously quite a lot of interest before we finally decided. And we'd started the planning to say, right, in 2 years' time, if we wanted to do this, what is it that we're going to need? And at a board, had started to put some of the framework in place. We then. Mike, who's the chairman at the time, said, right, I'm going to have a conversation with some external advisors. And I think he came back at the time and said, actually, the market's really, really exciting at the moment. And actually, perhaps now's the time when we need to think about the next steps in terms of writing an IM and just seeing what level of interest there was.
Yeah. Because I guess we would... In the midst and coming through that post-COVID cloud, work from home, remote working boom, where a lot of Microsoft partners had some really fruitful years out of that, didn't they? And so it's actually probably timing wise quite a good place to then go to market.
Yeah, it was, and all through COVID we were still growing. Interestingly, we built some tech and we migrated a customer. To a modern workplace experience and cloud managed, and we never visited them, which is, you look back now, we never visited the customer, and it was a large NHS hospital with a couple of thousand people. So we came out of COVID, yes, we had explosive growth like lots of organisations where, organisations hadn't perhaps done the investment. But at the same time, because we'd been building some of those propositions and investing in the people, we were really in a good place to really accelerate the growth. And because we've got the basics in place, some of the the rigor, corporate governance enabled us to start those preparations.
Yeah, and for anyone that's sort of never, or most people that aren't sort of in those board meetings, in those conversations as a business is starting to plan to go to market. You mentioned, those 2 years leading up, you're getting things ready. What do those things look like? At a board level, what are you getting ready to present to an investor? What sort of things are they interested in?
Obviously, the normal things in terms of financial performance, but then looking at the growth, looking where the growth is going to come from, looking at our people. If you're going to buy a business, you want to look at certainly what's the turnover of staff, what staff retention is like, and processes. How well is the business? What's the culture of the business? Because if you're for any acquirer, you're acquiring an asset, and the asset is the people, and making sure that there's rigor in the way that the business has been run. There was certainly an absolute focus in terms of reporting about how we were adopting technology, types of customers, the pipeline, and around our people, training, certifications, investment in advanced specializations. They were really core objectives for all of my leadership team. I look back and, it's easy to reflect and think, wow, we did it. But there was a lot of hard work by a lot of people to get to that position. These things don't happen by chance.
No. And once Intercity sort of come into the conversation, was there anything that sort of really stood out with Intercity that, straight away, was it a good feeling sort of thing where you're like, actually, there feels like there could be a really good synergy here between the two businesses?
Obviously, we went through a process.
Yeah.
We got the opportunity to meet a number of businesses. I remember the first meeting with Intercity with Charlie Blakemore and Chris Sharp and the rest of the team, walking away thinking they've got a lot of similar values to us. They really value people. And, as a CEO, having spent the time building the business, one of the things that I was really passionate about is finding a home for the business that had a long-term future for the employees. So, finding it the right home, similar values, similar culture, that really knew the value of what they were going to purchase and had a really clear plan. And certainly some of the early meetings, I walked away thinking these guys they're really going to value what they're going to buy, and they're going to really value the people. And, as that process continued, that became more and more evident. Now, clearly, there's still a huge due diligence process, which I'm sure we'll talk about in terms of, the rigor around the due diligence process and them understanding really what the business was about. But culturally and from a home perspective as to where the business was going to be, and also what it meant for the people and the opportunities it presented the other way. So, we're a Microsoft business. Intercity didn't have a Microsoft capability, so it was very much a hand in glove. Though I guess from a CEO perspective, looking at some of the acquirers, certainly there was a much more compelling rationale for them to be a lead in, dare I say it, in the race of an acquisition when you've obviously got 2 or 3 companies that you're talking to.
Yeah, and did it feel, I guess, more natural? And you spoke about there finding a home for the team that you'd built. Did it feel more natural bringing that into a business like Intercity that maybe didn't have the Microsoft capability, and I guess with that maybe came a degree of confidence that would be protected because that was a really strong asset that they're buying into the business versus maybe going into, being acquired or going into partnership with another fairly similar business that's got fairly similar skills, and actually then you start having, role clashes where it's like Dave over here has got the same job as Bob over here, and actually who do we keep? Was that a thought process?
I think when we spent some time with the Intercity team, their genuine desire was, we want a Microsoft capability. And then almost they impressed upon me as to their credentials around their people. They are the best companies to work for. Their vision is to be the best technology partner to work for and with. So, from the culture of the organisation, certainly that felt as if there was a really good fit. I'd spent a lot of time in Centrality building with the team a culture all around its people, being people first. And certainly that immediately resonated with me when we had those discussions. And then during that process, as we went through the due diligence, a lot of the conversation was then geared around, you've got great people. How do we make sure that during this process, that capability isn't lost?
Yeah.
Because that's the asset they're buying, the skills, capability, and the team. Obviously, there's a customer portfolio. We have, Centrality has some phenomenal customers with long-term partnerships. But ultimately, you're buying a capability. Intercity have got over 1,000 customers, all, dare I say, interested in and demanding what can you do for us around the Microsoft technology.
Yeah.
So there's real pull between us wanting to further scale and Intercity really wanting to sort of, dare I say it, really immerse itself in and become a Microsoft. We are now a Microsoft-first MSP. That is absolutely at our core.
Yeah. And bit of a sort of hypothetical type question, really, but why do businesses like Intercity go and acquire businesses like Centrality rather than just using that money that they've invested to just do it themselves? What are the challenges for businesses to build a Microsoft practice from scratch, and why is there such an appetite for acquisitions?
I think I always say there's a bit of a war on talent, and if you're going to try and build a true Microsoft capability, it's not something that you can flick a switch and overnight go and recruit a load of people and then say we're a Microsoft capability. It's got to be embedded in the DNA of the business. So that would be one element. The other is, and I'm sure all of our listeners that are in the Microsoft ecosystem, it is not an easy ecosystem to get your head around in terms of programs, incentives, sales promotions, designations. And, we're very fortunate. We were a very early CSP. We were a direct tier 1 CSP, trying to gain all of those certifications and advanced specializations is tough. And it's not something you can do overnight. And equally, if it's not something you're famous for, that journey to be known as they're a great Microsoft partner can take, a period of time.
Yeah.
And in many respects, years. It's not like months, it's years.
Yeah, definitely. And swinging back to, you mentioned sort of towards the tail end of Centrality, and obviously as you've now transitioned into Intercity, setting up that cyber focus within Centrality. We were speaking off camera about the billions that Microsoft are investing, and having gone from probably being an outsider in the security space 5-10 years ago to now being probably one of the highest spend IT companies in security. So I guess as you went through that journey in the security space, and that now becoming, I guess, a real cornerstone, do you think, of Intercity and what you're known for in the Microsoft ecosystem, what does that look like? Just talk us through the dynamic in selling and talking to customers about cybersecurity solutions in the Microsoft ecosystem.
I think lots of customers have perhaps had a diverse portfolio of security products, and I think historically, I would say Microsoft was never seen as that Gartner Magic Quadrant visionary, and I think sort of bringing customers on the journey. We talked very briefly, in the old days, if you said Defender and that was the security product, people probably would have laughed at you. But now Defender is a phenomenal product, and Microsoft invested billions into it. That journey for us, certainly coming into Intercity, has been a proposition change. So, being Microsoft first, we're now working with all of the Intercity customers on what does a Microsoft-based security solution look like. And, we've got our own SOC that's been audited by MISA, really pushing, your you're in the Microsoft ecosystem. Why wouldn't you use a Sentinel-based SOC? And how do we help you on that journey? And a lot of the times when you sit with customers and you go through their IT spend with the CIO and the CTO, actually they've, what do we know about Microsoft licensing? Customers spend an awful lot of money on licensing. And then when you lift the hood, you see that actually they're not using a lot of their license and they've got duplicate spend. And I think our role as a Microsoft partner is really to unlock that capability to help customers really realize their investment. And I think in doing that, you can educate customers on actually, if you look at the broader portfolio of what Microsoft offer, and dare I say it, navigate the licensing complexities. I put into Copilot, what's the number of combinations of common Microsoft SKUs? And it comes back with like 1 million different combinations of SKUs. Yeah. How does the customer navigate that? It's, features, SKU types, persona types. You can't do that on your own. You have to use a partner to really understand, especially if you want to get the true value.
Yeah.
So I think, our role as a Microsoft partner is to help customers in that transition. And I think certainly in the early days when Intercity acquired us, there's an education of the team in Intercity of actually this is the broader Microsoft portfolio. These are the things it can do. And then obviously helping customers to understand what capability they had in their toolbox to really leverage to their organization.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing, isn't it? A lot of the time, the kit's already in the toolbox and you've already paid for it.
Yeah.
But you just, you go in admin center and, customers got business premium or E3 or whatever, and they've got half of the solutions that they need. They're just not enabled or they're not implemented or they're still set as default. And actually, you go through these conversations with CTOs and CIOs, etc. And a lot of the capability they need, they're already paying for. And it's just a case of knowing where it is and how to implement it successfully.
Yeah. I think, we've got an amazing tech team. So, just put that on record. Please leave our tech team alone. They're great people. And interestingly, we've had our challenges retaining people where, dare I say it, you build a great team and some of your competition try and steal your team. But, we've got a great tech team. And, one of the things that the team have been done an awesome job is actually we've built some of our own tools that enable us to go into a customer environment and analyze both their security posture and actually the value that customers are getting from licenses and expose that in a way where actually it's a compelling, we provide a compelling interactive experience for the customer to say, actually, you've bought all of this security capability, it's not deployed. And actually, if you look at all your licenses, these licenses aren't being fully utilized, and helping customers on that journey. And that's a service that we provide. And when we help customers with their licensing, as part of the value add of being a CSP and direct CSP partner is how do we add the value? What we aren't is a simple transacting organization, and that's not what we're about. Yes, we can sell you the license, but actually our role is to help the customer really and partner. How do we help them take advantage of that? So, we've built some of our own IP around really exposing that to customers and helping them on that journey. And that's something that we do as part of our core service.
Yeah. And it's building internal proprietary IP. Do you think that's a really important thing for Microsoft partners or people in the Microsoft space to be doing now? Because obviously, when you think about the actual solution itself, 365, Azure, Dynamics, whatever, field on the Microsoft pitch that you play, ultimately the technology is all the same, right? It's from the vendor. And now when we're not even in a world as much where there's physical data centers, it's all managed by Microsoft off in the ether. So in effect, everyone's playing on the same pitch. So it's how do you really differentiate yourself in the market? And if you're in the tech market, I would imagine having your own tech solutions that interact with the Microsoft ecosystem a really good way of adding additional value and also differentiating yourself in the market.
Yeah, I think the real value you can help with customers is, to your point, lots of organisations talk about the tech and talk about the SKU. Actually, it's about understanding what the customer's objectives are and helping them. How do you help the customer being that trusted advisor and taking them on the journey? Organizations are all at different points of maturity. And we've got a thing that we use, which is like a comet. And at one end of the comet, you've got bleeding edge technology. And at the end, you've got, dare I say it, the laggards that are right at the end of the comet. And there's a inflection point in the middle, which is, where is new innovation and then sustained innovation. And our role is to work and understand where customers are on that part of the comet and then help and guide them. So in some cases, organizations don't want the latest, greatest thing, but us being able to articulate, these are where the products are going. This is where the market is. These are the challenges you've got. How do we help you? Whether that is automation, AI, the journey to the cloud, what good looks like from a security perspective. It's about Microsoft got this amazing tool set. It's not just about looking at the tool set. It's really about how do you apply the tool set to deliver the right outcome to the customer. And because your team really understand the technology and understand the customer's business pain, it's then about how do you really help the customer on that journey. And, we work with customers and, some of our customers have got amazing people. And our role is to augment their team. So, we talk about, it's not always about just outsourcing, or it's not about just giving guidance. Actually, it could be that our people and our team, our colleagues, work with the customer in the customer organisation, being part of their team. And maybe that's because they need an Intune specialist, they might need a Purview specialist to help them on that journey, as opposed to a whole scale, we're going to come in, we're going to do a large transformation. It's understanding where each of those customers. And I think that intimacy, becoming trusted, is the thing that sets you apart. We build our own IP, but it's those trusted relationships that, dare I say it, when the customer's in a ditch or in a trench and they've got a problem, they know they can pick the phone up and, we're with them in the trench and we'll get them out of the trench and work with them. And I think that trust is what it's all about. It's about long-term relationships, long-term partnerships. And I think that's where the real value is of forming those relationships with customers where they do trust you to help them on their journey. Because, the ecosystem is very difficult to navigate and it's really broad.
Yeah. And you mentioned, I really like that comet analogy.
Yeah.
And it feels like we're all chasing this comet, this AI comet at the minute that is flying at 1 million miles an hour through the technology universe. How do you see that interacting in real world now? Are we at a point where we're seeing, obviously Microsoft are really pushing the frontier partner piece and agentic AI. Are you seeing in your customers, Intercity's customers, that we're at a point where, agents are being deployed in production, they're having real impact now?
I think, each customer's on their own journey.
Yeah.
And I think there are different levels of engagement and, starting at the board level, actually ignore the technology for a moment. What is responsible AI? What are the policies that you've got? How do you educate the board of an organisation and what AI looks like and what good looks like? And I think there's our role is to help organisations at that level. And we work with organisations to help them on that journey and do a maturity assessment with their board and their organisation on actually where are you on that journey? As opposed to just saying, right, we've got Copilot. What business challenges have you got? How can, coming back one level, what's your vision? And what business, how will it at a strategic level help you? And then, help customers on that journey. We've got customers that are right at the start of the journey and customers that are, much further down the journey. And dare I say it, got champions. They're doing change and adoption programs. We've got customers and we will help each of those customers at different parts of their journey. If I look at some of our customers, say business school, number one business school in the world, we're working with them on their Microsoft Copilot journey, and they've got a really close relationship with Microsoft. A phenomenal company. They are totally embracing. We've worked with them from taking them to the cloud. Mark Bramwell and his team do a phenomenal job, but it's a really trusted partnership. And that's a really good example of, where we've taken them on that journey of moving them to the cloud and then looking, forward in terms of how do they adopt technology. They've scaled their business post-COVID to do thousands of courses now to, dare I say it, thousands of students around the world. And, it's great. And I'm really proud of the fact that actually we're part of that journey, helping them deliver that service. And they're on their own AI journey. So I think every customer is at a different point in their journey. And our role is to help them navigate and make best use of the technology. And dare I say it, not be that, we need to go and chase this ball called AI, which I think, sometimes organizations can say, I need to be using AI. Why? Because all my competitors are.
And I think that's one of the big risks with AI, isn't it? It's AI for AI's sake when it's not grounded in a really clear use case or business need. And it's been the same since the dawn of time, hasn't it? With people chasing shiny technology, and if you've got a use case and you can show where it's going to work and you can strategize around it, then it can have an impact. But if you're just chasing technologies for technology's sake, then sometimes you end up with a big bill that's not really used that much.
And it's, if you go back, what was the last one? Digital transformation. Everyone was talking about digital transformation, and that was sort of the buzzword at the time. Now it's AI. And to your point, there's nothing more frustrating to see customers that have gone and bought some Copilot licenses and then, don't know how to use them and then say, they're no good. When actually it's amazing capability, and, Copilot built into Teams, it's there for everybody to use. It's just how do you bring people on that journey and make it relevant to them, help them in their day to day, and, sit with, dare I say it, AI champions in their organisation. And some of the early adopters, different organisations have, dare I say it, this hidden talent. And, when you talk to boards and you say, your team in your organisation, you may not know it, they're all using AI. And maybe using AI that you don't know, and actually are the controls and governance, when actually you've got an AI stack built by Microsoft and Copilot Teams, that as a starting point, you can leverage with all of the controls that you need to safeguard your data. How do we help you use that? Because, there's a plethora of AI tools, as we all know. But that's a really good place to start. So I think helping customers on that journey, even if at the start it is, let's show you how to use Copilot in Teams, let's show you how to build some really basic agents. And I also think there's a bit of, when you talk to people about, I need to build an agent or an agentic agent, there's this, it's going to be some, really difficult thing. I need to go away and do coding. And actually, when you show people, it's like, that's actually a lot easier than perhaps I thought. So I think, our job is to sort of break those myths and jargon and to make it really simple for people to adopt and show them simple things like, how do you prompt? Sounds easy, but, what's a good prompt look like? How do we help you, guide you with some prompts that you might want to think about to get some outcomes?
And I always think that, and I even still catch myself doing it. And I think most people in the workforce have grown up prompting or searching on Google. And I think a lot of us take that to ChatGPT or into Copilot or Claude or Perplexity, and we engage with AI in the same way we've always engaged with search engines, but it's totally different. And you can get so much more out of it if you prompt it and you know how to actually interact with the technology in the right way.
And I think our job is to educate that it's not going to take your job away. The people that are going to win are the people that know how to use AI. So I think, to your point, how do we use it to get 80% of the answer, as opposed to give you all the answer and the answer may not be right, as a creative tool, whether it's a research tool. And it's a great asset to your organisation if it's properly harnessed. And to your point, you will look back and say, you used to do an internet search. You were looking for a restaurant and you used to do an internet search. Whereas in the new world, it's going to be, I need this, I want that, and this is the experience I want. And to come back with dare I say, a much more conversational approach. Interestingly, I was having dinner with my family, and we were talking about holidays. And my wife said to me, where should we go? And I'm like, well, I don't know. Oh, we want to go to Greece. We need to go to Google and research Greece. So I said, no. So I opened Copilot and put voice, and I said, and then we started a conversation with it. And she's like, if we were to plan an itinerary, which islands? This is what my family's like, and it replayed back. These are the considerations. And that's a completely different experience to perhaps what traditionally we've seen. That whole conversation, and it's really enriching. And interestingly, as you start to use it, it becomes much more ingrained. You tend not to go to Google to do a search. I'm going to say I live in Copilot. Whether it's summarising emails, whether it's looking at your diary, or doing an Eisenhower matrix on things you need to prioritise on as being an MD or CEO, it's a great tool. But it's that journey. How do you help people on the journey? And dare I say it, I consider myself, dare I say it, one of the age of a silver surfer. Myself coming on that journey, and dare I say it, I look at podcasts. I attend some of the Microsoft training. There's tons of it out there to try and refine and hone your skills.
Yeah, definitely. And if we guess circle back round to sort of you and your journey in technology, David, if you reflect back and look back at your career, it's been through lots of different down different roads and different avenues, and obviously led you to where you're at now. On the journey, is there anything that you now know that you wish you can jump in that time machine and go back to 23-year-old David and go, just remember, mate, these are the bits that you need to know that will guide you in the right way? Are there any tips or tricks like that you've picked up along the way?
I remember early on in my career, someone that was a mentor say to me, David, you're like a Ferrari with no brakes. Sometimes it's good to pause and bring people on the journey with you. And I think that's certainly a life lesson. Sometimes, it's very easy to jump to the solution without actually bringing your organisation with you and actually getting your organisation to come up with the answer. So you're not telling them. And, I always reflect on that as being a Ferrari with no brakes. And my personal, if I look at my personal makeup, I'm a bit of a fixer. Whether, if there's a problem, I'm the first person to put my hand up and say, well, I can do that. And I think sometimes it's good not to always do that and not always to jump to what you think is the solution, and make sure you pull the views, opinions of the wider team. One of the things, perhaps a life lesson was, and I think it's one of Steve Jobs' famous quotes, isn't it? Successful leaders bring a team together that are better than them.
Yeah. I like the Steve Jobs one. I don't know if you've seen it, when they say, what's the most successful Apple product that you ever built? And he said, the team.
Yeah.
Super simple.
Yeah.
And if we flip the lens the other way and we look, forward into the future, what does Intercity, what does your role look like over the next 3, 4, 5 years?
I think if we look at those in two parts, Intercity, we're on a journey. We're an MSP, but we are a Microsoft-first MSP. And obviously Intercity acquired Centrality. We've completely integrated the business now. So we're one team. We're rolling out Dynamics. We've got Copilot building. At its core, Microsoft is going to be core to the business. From a personal perspective, I want to see how I can help other people on their journey. I get a bit of a kick out of that. Certainly some of the younger generation, how do you help them pull through their career, give them guidance, give them support, and, the life experience that you gain over time, and spend a bit of time doing the things that I really enjoy outside of work.
Yeah, definitely. Not flying back and forth to India all the time.
No planes. Looking after myself, there's that, I've got a really, there's that, 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 saying that I say to myself, which is, you've got to look after yourself in order for you to look after your family.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important. That's the other piece of advice that I'd give people: really look after yourself, look after your health and your well-being. Because dare I say it, I've got a family, they're young, and it's really important to me that I look after them and spend time with them.
Yeah, 100%. Well, really appreciate that. Shall we dive into Microsoft Mentors quickfire round?
Come on then.
I've got a few lined up for you, David. Nothing too drastic.
No, I'm worried now when you say that.
One question that I have been asking actually this series, and I'd quite like to see what people's answers are. If you had to choose, what would be your favourite Microsoft product or Microsoft product suite of all time?
Definitely not Clippy. If you remember Clippy,
that's just Copilot, isn't it?
Yeah, well, there's that. Actually, I like Teams. That's one of my favourite products, Teams. Just the instant nature of it, a bit like text messaging, you can get a rich conversation going. And I think for collaboration, dare I say it, I live in Teams pretty much all the time. As a collaboration tool, that's probably my favourite tool.
Cool. What's one skill you wish you'd built earlier?
Oh, that's it. Or I think if you're destined for executive management, really getting underneath understanding finance, really deep understanding of finance. If you and I think if you're building your management skills around understanding what good looks like as a leader, and then understanding what the key KPIs you use to really grow and understand what's going on in the business.
Yeah. Work-life balance, myth or achievable?
Achievable. It's a couple of things: make time for yourself and get into good habits.
Yeah,
that's I think something that I've learned over the last probably 4 years is something I've spent a lot more time. I've lost a load of weight. I'm in the best shape of my life in terms of my personal fitness. And that's about getting into good habits and looking after yourself, making time for yourself.
100%. And on a personal note, are you early bird catches the worm? Are you a night owl, or do you burn candles at both ends?
I burn the candle at both ends, but doing two different things. So dare I say it, up early, looking at work, looking at emails, and then at the end of the day, spending time with the family. But then nearly every day, doing something in the gym.
Yeah,
even if it's for an hour. That's my habits. That's my routine. And I'm really fortunate. My wife's a personal fitness instructor, so it's not like when we've got a gym at home. That's one of our investments in ourselves is to look after ourselves.
Yeah, and then final one. You mentioned it earlier about holidays, maybe, but you've got unlimited budget. You've got 2 weeks to go anywhere in the world. Where are you packing your bags and going to?
That is a really, really difficult. Having travelled, one of the places that there's a couple of things. Number one, I'd like to get on my bike and ride down the west coast of America. I think I do a lot of cycling, and that would be really good. And doing the national parks. Certainly Utah's on my list of places to go. Never managed to go there, but that's certainly. I always say to my wife, wouldn't it be great when the children have gone, get a camper van, put some bikes on the back, and then just
go
and just go. Just spend your time just travelling around and getting the opportunity to meet amazing cultures, people, and immerse yourself in the big wide world.
Yeah, these days with Skylink and stuff, you can still stay connected.
You can stay connected. Maybe sometimes it's good not to be connected.
Yeah. David, thank you very much.
To speak to you.
Really appreciate it.
I really appreciate your time and visiting us today at Intercity.
Thank you very much.
Cheers. Thank you.
Hopefully you enjoyed this week's episode of Microsoft Mentors, the podcast with David Keeling at Intercity. It was a really interesting conversation, taking us all the way back to his days working in SMS text messaging and through into working in a leading Microsoft partner in Centrality, and then ultimately growing and scaling that to acquisition and the transition into the business now at Intercity.